So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a deeper look at the hip hinge and why we should be doing it, how to do it correctly, and where we should be feeling it, okay? So majority of us don't do enough work on what we call our posterior chain. So this is basically the back of us. We are generally sat down for long periods of the day, so we never really use the muscles in the back of us, and then these muscles in the front of us tend to get really tight and short because these muscles are not doing the job to keep us nice and upright. So I want to go through the hip hinge today and help you understand its importance in playing its role to help with you become better with your show jumping. So I've shown that obviously as you go into a hip hinge, if we think of our show jumping position, it is essentially that position, okay? It is also good because when we do a hip hinge, especially when we come with weight, if we think of as we're landing, we need to sit back, okay? So this is essentially both sections of your show jumping take off and landing phase, okay? So we need to be able to use the muscles in the back of the legs, also the back as well, yes, that'll come into it, to be able to stay balanced and in control of the movement when the horse takes off over the jump and also lands, because we want to be able to take the force and the pressure that comes from the horse as they take off and especially as they land to go away with them, okay? So the hip hinge, any hip hinge movement is going to be working the muscles down the back of the legs, but specifically we are looking at the muscles here. So these are the hamstring muscles. Hamstring meaning that there's more than one, okay? So there's a few different muscles going through the back of the legs, but we also look a little bit into the inner thigh as well with this exercise. It'll come a bit higher up into the top here, maybe into the glute a little bit, but it will be predominantly into the hamstrings, okay? So the exercise, if you've seen it a couple of days ago, I showed you doing it up against the wall. So this is a great way to learn how to hinge at the hips before we even start to think of picking up any weight, okay? And this just for one allows you to make sure you're getting in the correct position, stops you from kind of rounding through the back as you do it, and it allows you to make sure that you're getting the full stretch through the hamstrings, okay? So I showed in two different positions. The first position we would always go into when we're doing a hip hinge is just a normal feet underneath the hip stance, okay? So that is our normal go-to hip hinge position, okay? Always good to have some tactile feedback from your hands. So what we want to do here, we want to make sure the tailbone's tucked first of all. We don't want to be going out initially with a bum sticking out. It's already going into your lumbar spine, into your lower back, and that's not good. We want to make sure that tailbone stays tucked under. So we're instantly using those abs to stabilise through that pelvis. From here then I want to start to send my bum backwards, so I'm putting the weight into my heels as I then hinge forward, and I'm trying to reach that wall, okay? So from there that's as far as I can go forward. If I wanted to drop any more, I would have to round through my back, okay? And that's not what I want to do. But here we've got that position, we've got that show jump and take off position, okay? If I wanted to make it a little bit more, right, I'm on a horse position, I would then obviously need to take those feet a little bit wider. So we're probably going about shoulder distance apart as we go into this position, okay? There's no point in going any wider than that. This is not going to really benefit you. Just go to about shoulder distance apart. Exactly the same movement. I'm going to hip hinge, and here you can see I can come forward a little bit more just because I've got the feet that little bit wider, but I'm still maintaining that nice straight back as I go into that. So as I'm doing this movement, I'm just going to come forward a bit more. I want to be able to feel it through the backs of the legs here. So as I push my hips back, I'm trying to reach that wall. If I can get all the way, I feel a nice deep stretch through the back of the hamstrings here, right up to the top, okay? And then I want to come up from there. So what the common mistake here is, as we do it, we just kind of go through the motions here. Yes, we can do a hip hinge, that's great, but there's no intent or purpose with the movement, and we're not really getting the muscles in the backs of the legs to work. So this is why doing it up against a wall, first of all, is always going to make sure that you're doing the movement correctly and getting it in the right area, okay? So that movement again, tailbone is tucked, I am nice and tall in my posture, hands on my hips, I'm going to pull my elbows back to keep my chest open, I'm going to send the hips back as I try to tap the bum to the wall, feel that lovely nice deep stretch through the back of the legs, and then I'm going to use the glutes and the hamstrings to power me back up to the top, okay? So obviously when we don't have any weight in our hands, the power isn't really coming from anything, it's just you lifting yourself up. But if this is where you need to start, this is where you need to start, okay? So we need to make sure we're getting the movement pattern right first before we start taking it into any other movements. So if you were to do my stage 1, I start bringing in hip hinge movements in that, body weight only, okay? That's getting us used to doing that movement pattern with no weight to make sure that we're doing it correctly as we go in and out of it, and make sure that we're getting the muscles working correctly, and making sure we're not putting unnecessary load through that lower back that might cause us unnecessary pain later down the line if we're doing things incorrectly, okay? So if I was to look at this with adding in some weight, so I've got a couple of 15 kilograms here. Just going to pick these up. Should have probably put them on top of something to make that easier for myself, but never mind. So again, feet are coming underneath the hips. I'm going to do exactly the same. So here, this is the common mistake that might happen here. Dropping through the shoulders and then going into that RDL. It's not really an RDL, but just rounding through the back, okay? So here, I use the dumbbells to pin my shoulder blades back. And then exactly the same movement. I'm going to push the hips back, keep the chest open as I send it back through the heels and into the back of the legs, okay? The easiest common mistake here to do is drop here. You're better off keeping the shoulders pinned back. Work the muscles in the posterior back as well, not just the legs, into the back as well. You push the hips back, you're going to get much more out of that than you are if you just come in here like this, okay? I'm not really getting anything, and it's starting to kind of go into my lower back a little bit, okay? I'm just going to put them away. Easiest way to get rid of them, okay? So that is just a little bit more of a deeper understanding into what the hip hinge is, what the movement entails, where we should be feeling it through the backs of the legs, what we shouldn't be doing, which is here, rounding through the back, and then how it kind of crosses over into our show jumping. So if we want to get better at our show jumping, we need to get better at that hinge pattern. As soon as the horse takes off to go over the jump, we want to hinge forward. As soon as the horse then comes over, we want to start to lift back up, and then we want to come here to stop ourselves from losing our balance as they jump, as they land. So these are all important things, movement patterns, that we need to be learning as human beings to then better help our horse, okay? Hope that was nice and helpful for you, and that's given you a little bit more insight into why we train the body to then help with areas in our horse riding and in our show jumping.